My name is Eric Harmon. I am the singer of Reverend Jack.
Nice. And we were just talking about middle age, right? Or at least I was.
Something like that, yeah.
And you're 28 years old, and when do you think middle age is?
I don't know. I would imagine maybe somewhere in your mid to late 40s.
No. I think it's I don't mean to get all morbid, but I think it's closer to 35. As a lot of people die around 70. How old is the oldest person in your family?
That would probably be my grandmother, and sad to say, I'm not exactly sure how old she is. Somewhere in her 70s.
Oh, okay, cool. So you should at least live as long as her.
I'm hoping so.
No doubt.
The men in my family don't have particularly long lives.
Pardon me?
I'm hoping I live that long. The men in my family don't particularly have long lives.
Oh, okay. Do you know what the youngest deceased is?
Well, my father just died a few months ago, and he was 62, I believe.
That's relatively young. Do you? I don't mean. I'm sorry to hear that. Was it a heart issue, or is there?
He had some heart issues, but he was in the hospital with COVID and ended up getting MRSA in the hospital.
Oh wow, that's truly devastating.
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to start this interview off on a sour note.
No, you're all right. It's part of life, and I'm dealing with it, and my family's dealing with it. So we're getting.
You have a new album, is that right, Reverend Jack? It's talk about what the album is called and who's on it.
Well, the album is called A Mile From Home, and we've been rather fortunate with some guest appearances. So we have quite a few notable people that have assisted us with this album. We were lucky enough to have Joe Orchestra from notable TSO and White Snake fame. Also, another TSO man that Joel spends quite a lot of time with, Mr. Chris Caffrey. It's also on a few of the songs. And even some appearances from Captain Howie, notably played by Mr. D. Snyder and Alex Skolnick.
Wow. And I think you even have Bruce Watson and Michael Bluestein. Is it Steen or Stein?
I have this contention myself. I'm never quite sure, and I never want to make Michael upset. So I tend to say Stein, but I believe it might be.
So the new album is out, and it's on the radio charts. I'm looking at here. You are number 27 this week. Is that right? You're up there with Gojira and Motorhead. How sweet is that?
That's pretty awesome. I don't generally have enough time to look at it. Our management tries to keep us as informed as possible, but it's pretty darn awesome. Considering I'm a Gojira fan myself.
How do you like the new album?
I enjoy it quite a lot. Since getting it in, I've gotten to sit through it and listen through it because, there's always a little bit of touch-ups and some production magic that goes on the end after the recording process is over. So I've gone through a bunch of times to look at little details and stuff, and I'm quite pleased with how the album turned out.
Yeah, some albums grab you right away, and then some albums take a little while to grow on you. Is that the same for you?
No, for me, from the first hearing of every song, how it's turned out, I've loved the album. Obviously, there's the egomaniac in me that goes, man, I feel like I could have done this better. Or I feel like I could have done this better. But, I think a lot of musicians have that. So overall as a product, I really enjoy the album. I think it turned out really well.
And your album was, it's been a production of the last 2 years, or last year, or 6 months?
Yeah, it's been a production about the last year or so. We spent the first couple months of 2020 kind of moping because of the circumstances that arose, and finally got stir crazy enough to go, all right, we need to write an album. And so we spent most of 2020 writing songs, and
how did you get into music? What turned you on to the kind of music you play? And are there any kinds of music that you like that people might be surprised to hear?
Well, I got started in music because my mom was a guitar player. So as I grew up, we always had a guitar in our house. I started playing and ended up, when I got into high school, I ended up doing choir just to learn to sing backup, and found out I was way better at singing than I was at playing guitar. And naturally got thrust in that roles. And as I got older and got into bands and such, as a band, we listened to, so much variety of music. We're very eclectic. I listen to, everything from old Delta blues to classical music to, modern hard rock and stuff. There's a lot of stuff in there, and there's some definite Southern inspiration. We are from Kentucky, so we do have our little Southern touches in there. As for songs that I think anyone that met me might be a little bit surprised. A lot of my friends would know this, but I'm quite fond of show tunes.
Oh wow! Show tunes and soundtracks. Are you a fan of soundtracks much?
I like soundtracks a lot, but show tunes more in like the sense of Broadway.
I see. Do you are you a theatrical? Have you done any sort of acting? Have you done any sort of theater?
In high school and college, I was in a lot of high school and public productions.
And how much of your live? I wonder if you put any of that stuff into your live performance.
To some degree, but I think I take more inspiration from watching other live artists, other live rock bands and stuff. Sometimes it translates over. I mean, obviously Freddie Mercury did a heck of a job doing it. I'm a little more reserved on stage, ironically enough, so I tend to go the more traditional rock approach with it.
And what was the first music you bought with your own money? And what have you bought more than once in a different format? And what is your most prized music collectible?
Well, the first and second can be answered with one answer. It's both the same thing. The first thing I ever bought with my own money was the greatest hits collection of the Eagles. I lost it, and I bought another copy of it. And oh man, my favorite. I think my favorite thing is I have a collector's edition set of the Alter Bridge live live with the Parallax Orchestra at Royal Albert Hall. Yeah, it was a gift my wife got me, and I love it. It came with the Blu-ray and the DVD and the CDs, and my wife would get irritated because I would put on the Blu-ray and watch it all the time.
And so, are you a fan of these meldings of orchestra and rock? So
I am.
Have done it. Many bands have done that.
I love it. Basically, every band that I'm a fan of that's done a live album with an orchestra, it tends to be my favorite of their albums.
What is it that you like about that kind of thing? Just it's different strokes for different folks.
I don't know. The best way I've ever been able to closely explain it is I told a buddy of mine once. I said, with with music, maybe it's because of the way I grew up, being in band and orchestra and being in these live production, musicals and theatrics. There's so often more than not, there is some kind of orchestration. So maybe it's just like this thing that I'm so used to hearing and it's not there. So I hear these orchestrated CDs and it's like, oh, finally it's, the complete sound that is in my head.
And what's your scene like in Kentucky? Are you part of a local scene, or are you basically on you do your own thing and more of a recording band?
I would say the general scene that we sit in here is a Southern hard rock. There is a bit of a Southern hard rock scene around Kentucky, or at least in the area that we're in. So we definitely sit in it to a degree. We get along with a lot of the, friends with a lot of the bands that are in that scene. But we do stray to some degree. We spread our wings a little bit wider than, is typical.
And is the local scene on there's local scenes go up and down. Would you say your scene is up right now? Or
unfortunately, I'm not actually 100% sure. I just moved and I bought a house, so we've been kind of having to slow down as I go through the moving process, and we go through the album process of playing some shows in more far away venues.
Oh, where can we expect to see Reverend Jack next?
We're still in the works of booking some more shows and looking at tours and such. So everything's a little bit slow right now. We'll have to. I'm still waiting to see what we come up with, and if anyone wants to see any shows, anything we have booked will be on our website.
The music business is, I guess, ever in transition, especially with this digital age that we live in now. I think there was a time there that the business model was the same, but obviously it's changed now. How have you seen it different for you going from singing?
I think there's certainly a lot more notoriety that comes with releasing an album. But I think in terms of building a following, I think singles tends to be the way that's most. There's certainly something to say about releasing an album. I think everyone's goal at some point or other is to release an album. It's like a check, at least a checkbox that you have to do mentally. And
releasing an album is a different sort of art than a single. They're both their own. They're both their own art forms. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. There's, a single is going to be a small notation of who you are. And with an album, you get to kind of expand upon that. Instead of being, when you release a single, and think of it in the terms of this, if a band were just to release a single, you get this small snippet of who this band is as writers and interests and what kind of music I like. But with an album, and it was one of the things that was rather enjoyable about recording the album, is we had so much space to kind of go, all right, what kind of band do we feel like this day as we're writing this song? So with 12 songs, you have 12 different snippets to kind of expound upon your musical taste and how you want to show your.
So like an appetizer versus the full meal. I know lately there's been quite a bit of death in the music world. Which artist death has impacted you the most?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I would say the two that jump out to me are probably, first one is no surprise after I just told you what my favorite album is. Miles Kennedy. I think his songwriting is very, very wide. I enjoy it quite a lot. To be able to go from something that's a little bit heavier in the Alter Bridge world to his solo stuff, which is more folk and singer-songwriter, and then the classic blues rock stuff with Slash is his width of ability to write different songs is incredible. And the other one I would say is 12 Foot Ninja. They're kind of all over the place as a band that will have a song that has very, very heavy parts of it and then go into this fusion funk section. It's a little bit random, but it's incredible. And the way they're able to transition between the two spots is.
You like that sort of eclectic vibe?
Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place when it comes.
What kind of gear is bringing us the Reverend Jack sound? And do you have any endorsements and any dream endorsements?
Well, as to sound, any Reverend Jack recording you've heard probably has a 5150 on it. One of the new EVH 5150s. That's what Destin plays. And a combination of either a Les Paul or a Charvel Dinky is what he likes. And most of my stuff is either through a Vox or my modular that I use, and I use a PV Wolfgang. Dream endorsements. I know Dustin's rather fond of Friedman amps, and I quite enjoy Victory, and we both use DR strings. And, we have a deal with DR strings, and we both.
What's the one album that epitomizes your style of music above all others? What's your go-to album for motivation, and why that album?
I would say that there's not an album that epitomizes my sound. I'm still looking for it every day. I think it's part of what drives me as a songwriter is writing the album that finally epitomizes the sound in my head. For inspiration, I probably still go back to that Alter Bridge album live at Royal Albert Hall. As a band, the way that Alter Bridge performs live is incredible to me. And they have a fairly wide songwriting ability between all their albums and how they've adapted over the years. I find them very, very impressive as musicians. Every account that I've heard of them has, from people that have met them or from my own experience of meeting Miles, has been very, very, very gracious and represents them very well as people. So I'd say just overall as a band, I take a lot of inspiration from them, from their musical abilities, from their professionalism, from how they interact with their fans and their own kind.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us here on Metal Gods Radio. Do you have any final thoughts that you have to share with anybody?
Yeah, if you're looking for something that's a little bit different when it comes to heavier music, check us out. I mean, we're a little bit odd and all over the place, but we tend to have something that, at least one song that a lot of people will enjoy. You can always check us out at